Okay, real talk. Before we get into the main part of today's video, I've got a story to share. It's got a little emotion, a little childhood healing, and yes, it involves me walking into a sporting goods store as a full-grown adult to buy a baseball glove like I was about ready to join Little League again. I didn't cry in the store. I might be lying a little about that, but let's just say the smell of leather hit a little harder than expected. It's a story about fathers, about healing, and how just a simple game of catch, unexpectedly, and I mean that, cracked open something in me that fueled a whole new level of creativity. And trust me, stick around for at least 4 to 4.5 minutes on this one, because there's a video clip coming up that ties it all together. And it's one of those moments I will never forget, ever. You might laugh a little bit, you might tear up a little bit, maybe both. Either way, I really think it's worth watching. You see, for most of my life, I carried my father like a shadow, close, heavy, and just behind me. I knew he loved me. I really did. But his love came dressed in distraction, in busyness, in silence. Like many men of his time, he'd inherited a script written in pain, handed down from generation to generation like a family heirloom that no one wanted, but no one dared to burn. When my dad died, I grieved, but not cleanly. There were way too many unresolved chapters, too many lines left unsaid. And it wasn't until 20 years later, when my own life started to crack, spiral, crumble, that something in me reached out, not to a therapist yet, not to a program, but to men. Gentle men, men with silver in their beards and stories in their eyes, men who listened without fixing. One of them was a pastor, but not the shiny kind, right? He was scarred and soft in all the right places because he had faced his own childhood like a man returning to the scene of a fire, not to watch it burn though, but to sift through the ashes and rebuild. His name was Jim. I asked him one day if he'd meet with me once a week to mentor me. Jim said yes. So every Thursday from 3 to 4, we talked. I brought my wounds, he brought his presence. And then out of nowhere, about a month into it, he said, Carlos, bring your glove next week. Let's throw some catch. That was odd. I don't know why I didn't ask why. I didn't even think. I just said, okay. I hadn't held a glove in decades. The last time was literally in Little League. But the very next day, I walked into the same sporting goods store that I used to wander as a boy. The moment that I stepped in, I smelled the leather. And time seemed to bend backward. I stood in the aisle, not just picking out a glove, but picking up a part of myself that I didn't even know was still alive. I smacked the pocket with my fist. I made the pop with the ball. I was 8 again, and 38, grieving, curious, and somehow for the first time in a long time, quietly joyful. That Thursday, after our usual talk, we walked out to the back lot, and we began to throw the ball. One toss, then another. No scoreboard, no words needed, just the rhythm of release and return. We did that for 20 minutes. Again, the next week, and then the next. For 4 months straight, 2 grown men threw a ball back and forth, and something sacred moved between us. I really didn't know it then, but I was healing. One day, during a journaling exercise prompted by my therapist, I was asked to recall a positive memory with my father. At first, the page stared back blank, and then there it was. He had come home early from work one day. He called my name from the stairs, which was very rare, and he told me, Carlos, grab your glove. We walked the path through my backyard to a nearby park, just the two of us. The diamonds were empty. We threw the ball. I remember feeling so excited and also terrified at the same time. Not of him, though, but of the moment ending. Every return throw felt like it might be the last, and eventually it was. We never did it again. Now, fast forward 35 years. I'm in a parking lot throwing catch with a man who knew my father, a man old enough to be him. Only this time, the game was different. Every throw wasn't goodbye. It was welcome. A wordless expression that said, Carlos, you're seen. You matter. I'm here. Jim was unknowingly helping me patch together the father-shaped gap in my soul. And as I journaled more, space opened inside me, room for those good memories to return and rest without shame. Creativity poured in like rain through a cracked ceiling. Songs, stories, images, they all found their way through the wound that was finally being tended to. But the story doesn't end there. 5 years later, Jim called. He was coming to town and asked if he could stay the night with me and my wife. Of course, we had another room, so I said, definitely, Jim. That morning, just before I left for work, he stopped me. Carlos, I need you to come outside with me for a minute. I followed him to his truck, expecting just a big hug goodbye. Instead, he reached into the back seat and he pulled out 2 baseball gloves. I smiled, half laughing. Really, Jim? Right now? He looked at me and he said, Carlos, you told me that playing catch with you helped heal your father wound. What I never told you was that playing catch with you helped heal my son wound. My wife caught it all on video. 2 men tossing a baseball in the morning light. No scoreboard, no words, just the sound of healing moving back and forth through the air. Now let's talk about why facing pain unlocks true art. Somewhere between the quiet ache of a childhood memory and the silence that follows a broken relationship, a spark begins to flicker. It's not the kind of spark that lights up the sky, though. No. It's the kind that sits in the soul like a buried ember, one that you don't know was still burning. That spark is pain. And for the creator, pain is not just a weight, it's a well. Now let's talk about how creativity can be fueled by healing. Here is the unpopular truth. Some of the greatest creative breakthroughs are on the other side of what you've been trying to avoid. Pain doesn't just weigh you down, it shapes you. It teaches you to listen differently, to see more deeply, and to feel more fully. And when you begin to heal, that pain, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes fuel. Now let's talk about the role of pain. Most of us spend years avoiding it, stuffing it, denying it, pretending that we've moved on. But unresolved pain, it has a strange way of sneaking into our work. It's in the bitterness of the story that we can't finish, the numbness in the painting that lacks soul, the hesitation in the song that never leaves our notes app. But when we choose to face that pain head on, everything changes. that raw emotional tension, it becomes narrative depth. Those hidden beliefs, they become characters, they become lyrics and color. That long buried memory, it becomes the most honest thing that we've ever made. Now let's talk about the journey of healing. Healing isn't just something that just happens. It's actually a craft in itself. You don't get stronger by waiting. You get stronger by working, by grieving, by forgiving, re-examining. You name the things that broke you. You tell the truth about what hurt. You find a rhythm in the ruins and a melody in the mess. And when you do, your creativity doesn't just expand, it deepens. You write differently. You shoot differently. You speak with clarity, not just skill, because now your work isn't just good, it's honest. Now let's talk about what emerges creatively. The best art, I really don't think comes from perfection. I think it comes from the willingness to bleed a little onto the canvas. Your healing doesn't need to be finished for your creativity to begin. It just needs to be in motion. The courage it takes to say, this is what I've walked through, will echo louder than any polished, pain-free performance. And sometimes healing itself becomes the art. Now let's talk about how avoidance limits and honesty frees. The biggest lie that I think we've been told is this, that we have to be okay before we can create something meaningful. The truth is, we can create right now because we're human right now, because pain and healing, fear and hope all belong in your work. And the more that you lean in, the more powerful your voice becomes. The wounds that you carry, they may not be visible, but they've been shaping you for years. Now, it's your turn to shape them into something beautiful, something that says, I'm still here. I'm still creating. I'm not afraid of the truth anymore. Now go. Create with scars wide open. Let your healing leave a trail of beauty behind you.